Hello, everybody. It is June the 13th, 2025, episode number 54, coming to you live from Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm Jason White, your host. I am a really busy homicide detective. At least I have been this week. I think I've cracked a cold case. Somebody's life is about to change forever. They don't know it's coming, so I'm super excited. I've had a good day today. And hopefully, in the near future, you're going to see it on the news that somebody is going to be held accountable, and I'm really excited about that. What a week! What a week we're having in this country. A lot of crazy stuff going on, and I at least wanted to give a shout out to Phyllis and her husband William that are dealing with. He's got a lot of medical issues going on right now, and Phyllis is. Basically posted some stuff out there to let her friends know, and certainly is welcoming any kind of prayers that would come her way. And let's keep her and her husband William in our thoughts. She's a loyal listener each and every week. And so, our heart does go out to you. And Anthony, I want to mention you, Anthony, up in Rochester. Thanks for the coffee. He sent me some coffee my way, and he's my number one fan in Rochester, New York. Always worthy of a shout out to him as well. I wanted to mention a couple of other things before we get rolling here. For those of you that are listeners, a couple of things I wanted to mention. Number one, if you have kids that are kind of interested in law enforcement and stuff like that, I highly encourage you to check out the Police Explorers or the police cadet programs that exist throughout this country. I know that Tulsa Police Department, we had ours kind of on a little bit of a break because of COVID, and they have started that up again. If you're certainly in the Tulsa area, check them out. They currently have like 20 kids that show up to this thing. Their ages 14 to 20. And you can look into it. Just check it out. Google it. Go to Tulsa Police Cadets, or go to your local police department and give that a look. I was an explorer for the fire department and for a hospital, and no doubt that absolutely opened doors for me when I got out of high school and when I was on a search for a job. So keep that in mind. The other thing I wanted to mention in reference to that actually is that I get asked all the time in reference to clothing. Hey, where can I go buy a Tulsa Police shirt? Or where can I get, a sweatshirt that says Tulsa Police, et cetera, et cetera? You can basically go there. We've just put the link up, and Amanda was kind enough to put that up. Thank you. You can go there. You have till June. I think it's June the 29th to put an order in if you want one. And I'm going to tell you something. The shirts that they're selling from here look really good. They're $13 they're $13. You can't beat that for a really cool looking Tulsa Police or TPD shirt. And they also have sweatshirts. And I think the sweatshirts were like $23 and they look cool. I mean, I don't know if you really want to wear a police anything out in the public, but if you wanted to wear it around your house, I promise you it's good quality. And here's the best part about it. All of the profit, from what I'm understanding, at least this is what I was told, the proceeds are going to go to our Explorer program. So it goes to a good thing, and keep that in mind. And I think that if they get enough success with selling stuff out of there, they'll probably open that up and start selling more things. But I don't know who designed it, but whoever did, they deserve a pat on the back because they did a really good job, and keep that in mind. Tonight, we've got a great guest. This guy is a friend of mine. I'm gonna briefly go over his. I say this all the time. Every time I bring these guests on, I think I'm a big deal, and I'm really not, because when I'm looking at these guys' resumes and gals, I'm like, holy cow, what have I done my whole career? I need to do more, But Rick is somebody that I've known for a long time. I've known him for almost 10 years, and Rick and I have actually been fortunate enough to speak at. I think we spoke together in Indianapolis, Michigan, and Ohio. And so I've sit back like a fan and watch him, and he's a great guy. Rick Salcedo is a seasoned detective, currently serves with the University of Central Florida Police Department with 26 years of dedicated service. He retired from the Orlando Police Department in November of 2016. Throughout his tenure, he has had various roles that are assignments that include the Patrol Division, Marine Patrol, Mounted Patrol, and Property Crimes Detective. And notably, he spent 17 years dealing with sexual crimes, like the Special Victims Unit is what they call it now. And so he's pretty well versed in that area, and now he's with the University of Central Florida Police Department. But additionally, he has a commitment to the public safety, which extends beyond investigations. He served as an on-call negotiator with the Orlando Police Department crisis negotiating team for over 18 years, and that is a tremendous commitment, and responded to high-stakes situations involving suicidal individuals and barricaded gunmen. That's where I know him from. His adept negotiation skills have resulted in numerous successful resolutions, saving lives without loss. And notably, he's among the negotiators who responded to the tragic 2016 Pulse nightclub shooting. And if I'm not mistaken, and he can correct me on this, but I think that's the biggest mass murder disaster or mass shooting we've had in this country's history, if I'm not mistaken. Although, no, actually, I think the Vegas one has now surpassed it. But up until then, that was it. He's presented all over the country. And I think when you see him, you're going to be impressed with him as I am. And not only is he presented all over this country, he's presented in Canada. And I hope to present with him in Tennessee in the upcoming future. So if Tennessee's listening and you're in the house, you need to give Rick a look, because I'm already going to be speaking there. And another thing I want to mention, too, is he's an 11-year veteran with the U.S. Air Force. So, golf clap to you for that. And finally, I want to give a big shout out to my biggest fan in where he lives, and that's his wife. And that's Robin Salcedo, who is my super fan. And Rick's sitting there going, oh, God, here we go. I've got to hear it. But yes. And then I want to talk a little bit about Rachel Sines. We've got two guests coming on, and this is really going to be about Rachel's story. Rachel Sines endured a harrowing ordeal 17 years ago when she became a survivor of sexual assault and kidnapping during an armed burglary at her home. I just think about that, and I've responded to calls like this. I can't even imagine the terror that goes along with that. I will tell you this, that ladies and gentlemen, if you've got a question for her, Rick was telling me before we got started here that don't hold back. They're used to people kind of being nervous about asking specific questions about an incident. So if you've got a question, throw it out there and we'll give it a look. And you never know, they may answer that. So despite her trauma she faced, justice prevailed as her assailant was apprehended, tried, and convicted on 10 felony counts. I don't want to get into the sentence because I'll let them get into that. But basically, she currently resides in Central Florida with her daughter, and she serves as a dedicated project manager. And in both her personal and professional life, she actively advocates for victims and individuals seeking healing, aiming to turn the darkness of their past experience into a beacon of hope. And I can't even imagine of a better way to put that. Let's welcome Rachel and Rick. Thank you guys for coming. I appreciate it very much. It means a lot. So I think that our guests are going to get a lot out of this. So thank you. Rick,
no, thank you.
The floor. Yeah.
Hi.
I'm sorry to bring it up about your wife. I know she's just an incredible fan of mine.
She's loving it, I'm sure.
All right, well, start us off, Rick, and tell us a little bit about this story and how this kind of started.
So the call first came out as a victim interrupted a residential burglary. She walked in on the burglar, and then at that once she walked in, she encountered him and she held her at gunpoint. Again, we're getting bits and pieces of Rachel's story because we haven't met with her yet. We're just relying on the initial 911 call. She ran into some friends at a local bar, and then she met with a patrol officer, the first responding officer, that's Sergeant Parker, at that bar. She was extremely hysterical. And then at some point, she disclosed to Sergeant Parker that she was sexually battered. So anytime we have a case where it was a home intrusion and a sexual battery, it's an all hands on deck. The entire Special Victims Unit responds to the call. And at that time, we had about 6 detectives and 1 sergeant that responded to this call. So Rachel, you want to pick up from here what you told Sergeant Parker, and then we can go on from there?
Yeah, so basically what I had told him was I, came home and there was somebody inside that had a gun. And I remember being terribly shaken and in shock. And he kept asking me questions like, description and things like that. And I would absolutely fail at the job of guess your weight at the fair, because I never know how to guess like how tall people are or how heavy they are. So I really felt like I wasn't doing a good job of describing him or describing the situation, because he was a stranger to me. I also didn't know my license plate number or anything like that. So all the questions he was asking me, I felt like I wasn't being very helpful. But I remember he was very protective of me immediately. He had me sit in the back of his squad car and wouldn't let anybody near me. So he was really the first officer that I came in contact with that made me feel safety for the first time after what had just happened. So
let me stop you real quick and let me ask you. So you come home, and when you get home, your door was locked, or was it locked?
Yeah. So I had actually been out with friends the night before. It was, or that night, it was a friend of mine's birthday, and we were visiting the bar that was just right next door to my apartment complex. I had a beer or two, and then it was time to go home. It was a work night. It was a Tuesday. It was the eve of Valentine's Day. And a friend of mine had too much to drink. And so I asked her if she needed help home. So I helped her home. And as we were leaving, I asked another friend of mine, like, hey, do you need help as well? And he was like, no, I'm good. And I was like, well, I'm just next door. If you need anything, just let me know. And so I took, her home, and then I went home myself. When I first got home, everything was normal. Lights were the way I left it. Everything was fine. I started getting ready for bed. I took out my contacts, had a glass of water, and then no sooner had my head hit the pillow that my friend from earlier, texted me and was like, actually, if that offer still stands, I could use some help. I said, no problem. Got up, helped him home, came back home myself. I couldn't have been gone for more than, in my mind, it wasn't more than like 20 or 30 minutes, because it was real close together. But the second time I entered my home, lights were different. And the first thing I noticed was the sound of my vertical blinds blowing and clacking in the wind. And we lived on a first floor apartment. And we had one of these cat doors, right? That we had two cats, and it was like this little unit you installed in the sliding glass door, or the slider, and the cats could go in and out of it.
Yeah.
Well, the vertical blinds had been closed completely over the whole sliding door area, and they were blowing in the wind. And I walked over to it, and I think my brain tried to think of every scenario other than the one that was obvious, and that was that somebody obviously had broken in. Mm-hmm. And my next thought was, are they still here? And so I immediately did an about face, and I started to go back towards my apartment door. I had closed and locked it behind me. And then that's where I saw him standing there in the hallway. You can see the hallway that leads back to my bedroom there. He had come out of my bedroom while I was investigating the door, and was standing there. As I was crossing back towards the door, is when I saw him, and I just immediately knew the implications. And I remember screaming, "No!" And I started to run back towards the sliding glass door, because we were on the first floor apartment, and I thought I had a better chance of getting out that open door and maybe jumping the railing than fiddling with a deadbolt. But
yeah,
it was a very small apartment. He tackled me to the ground pretty quickly from behind, and I even hit my cheek on a coffee table. And at that time, the cell phone I had my cell phone in my hand because I was going to try to call as I was leaving trying to leave, and it popped out of my hand and onto the ground. I remember trying to reach for it, and he kind of reached for it and took it away from me. And then that's when he showed me his gun. He just I was on the ground, and he just kind of put it in front of my face like, look what I've got. He just presented it to me. And it was just immediate submission. So then he was, pacing around my apartment asking me where all my money was. I told him I didn't have any. I was offering him jewelry. And he didn't want anything like that. I was trying to give him whatever I had valuable. He just wanted money. And then eventually he took me back to my bedroom, and that's where he assaulted me several times in ways, and with the gun held to my head the entire time. Afterwards, he took me into my bathroom and had me shower, trying to rid himself of me. Or my body of him, I guess, rather. And then he had me get dressed. He then started wiping everything down. He wiped down the tub. He was wiping down everything he touched, my cabinets, things like that. And he brought me out into my living room, and he started to pull speaker wire out from behind my entertainment center. And he told me to get down on the ground. And lay down on the ground, and he was going to tie me up. And the only thought I had was, he's gonna kill me, and then my husband is going to come home, and he's going to find me dead, and there's going to be no evidence, and there's no trace, and he's going to get away with this and do this to somebody else, right? And so I just remember thinking, well, hold up. I knew the only thing he really wanted was money. So I said, I don't have any here, but I can take you to an ATM. And he was like, well, what ATM? And I thought I was being kind of smart, because there was this 7-Eleven that was down the street, that a gas station that had a police substation inside of it. And I thought maybe he didn't know that. And as soon as I had mentioned it, he was like, no. And so I said, well, there's another one just down the street. It's just in a shopping center. We can drive by. And if you don't like it, we'll go wherever you want to go. And so he said, okay. He started grabbing, he went and grabbed a bag that he'd gotten, I think, from my closet, and he put various stuff in it from around my house. And he stuffed like the towel, the speaker wire, everything that he touched into this bag. And then he was kind of pacing around until he was like ready to go. And then I remember right before we left the apartment, he said to me, now you can't run and you can't scream, because this bullet is louder than you can scream, and it's faster than you can run. And I said, got it. And so we left the apartment, and I can't remember if I had the keys or he did, but he was wanting to lie down. I was like, well, here, no, I need to lock the door so that my husband doesn't think anything was wrong, because I wanted the keys. I wanted control of the keys. And so I locked the door, and then I just did an about face to my car, and I walked to my car. I got into the driver's seat. He got into the passenger seat. He kind of hooked his finger around my belt loop and held the gun to my waist while we drove out of the apartment complex, past our security, down the street to this little shopping center. And it was just the ATM was just like one of those lobby ATMs. It's like, it was at night. So the bank itself was closed, but there was like this little vestibule that you could slide your card in to go in to get to the ATM machine. Yeah. And so we did that. And at first he made me do a balance inquiry. And then he basically had me pull all of my money, which was about $800. I just got paid. It was like $800 something. And I was surprised the ATM machine gave it to me, but it was this huge wad of 20s. Yeah. And I remember trying to give it to him. Go ahead.
Had he been talking to you at any point in time? Just kind of small talk between there?
Well, it was really hard. He all I could remember, and one of the only identifying things I could give the detective was that he had an accent. And it was really actually hard to understand him. I remember saying what a lot, and then he would kind of slap me a little bit because I wasn't understanding, or maybe. But there was no small talk. There was no, but I will say that I was doing everything I could to try to make eye contact, to try to, I guess my own small talk, to try and somehow my strategy was to be as least threatening as I could possibly be, and almost be like a friend, right? Yeah. But yeah, he was all business. But yeah, I remember I got the money. I tried to give it to him, and he was like, "No, put it in your pocket." And so we walked outside onto the street or into the parking area of the lot, and I tried to give it to him again. He said, "No, get in the car." And so I got back into the driver's seat, and that's when he took the money from me. And then, he said, "Well, let's go back to your apartment." And I said, "Well, my husband's probably home by now. That's probably not a good idea. Why don't I just drop you somewhere, And he said, "Okay, well, I'll show you where to go. Go down here." And so I put the car in gear. And I guess this is the point when my adrenaline started to catch up, because I started visibly shaking, putting my hand on the gear shift and onto the steering wheels. I was uncontrollably shaking. And, of course, he sees this and he says, he's like, "Don't worry, you're going to be okay." Like I was being a good victim. Mm-hmm. And then in the same breath, he said, "But if you tell anybody about this, or I see this on the news, I will kill you." And I remember I just patted him on the leg, and I was like, "Oh, don't worry. I won't tell anybody." We were old friends. This was something that friends did. And so he directed me down the street and down through it was like a grocery store and a McDonald's or something. And it went back behind, into a business park area. And it was, I don't know at this point, 11 midnight. I don't know what time it was, but it was businesses. It was like dentist office and, Quests, things like that. There was no cars, and it was just street lights and parking lots. Nobody. And so he directed me to one of the, empty parking lots, and he, started to move from the passenger seat into the driver's seat. And he was telling me, "Okay, now get into the passenger seat, get in the passenger seat." And I just kind of got out of the car, and he was yelling at me, "Get in the passenger seat." And I was like, I don't know, maybe it's all the America's Most Wanted or, those kind of shows that I would watch. It was anytime you saw or heard of a woman getting into a car with somebody she didn't know, that was the last time you saw her. Yeah. And somehow I just didn't want him to take me somewhere and do what he was planning to do in my apartment and not be found, or 6 months later not be found, or not, just go missing, and he would just, again, get away with it. So I just made the decision. I was like, it's going to be here. If he's going to do it, it's going to be loud. It's going to be messy. It's going to be on my terms. And I just started back away from the car, and I was just like, just take it. Just take it. You have my money. You have my purse. You have my cell phone. You have my car. Just take it. Just take it. And I remember the look of decision across his face, and he just frustratingly closed the door to the driver's side and drove off, and I ran in the opposite direction. And then I ran back to the bar that I had been at just earlier, just a couple hours earlier, laughing with friends. I went back there and hoping that I would find somebody I knew that was still there, that had a cell phone that I could borrow. And I did. As soon as I approached the establishment, some friends of mine that I knew were walking out, and my legs immediately buckled, out from under me. And my one friend came to me, and, all I could muster was I whispered in her ear, there was someone in my house when I got home and he had a gun. And, her husband, she said to her husband, call 911. And that was when everybody responded.
And I'm sure your face looked horrible. I mean, I saw the pictures.
I did. The middle one there, you can see that was like directly after. It was like a little, is where I got hit. And then the one on the right is a couple days later. It just got worse over time. But yeah, that was, other than, that was, I think, my only real physical injury, I guess you will, if like laceration wise, yeah.
So you call the cops. The cops get called. Do they come to the bar, or do your friends take you to your residence?
They came to the bar. And they, at the first, again, Sergeant Parker, well, first it was EMTs that, responded to me, and
right.
They were like, oh, we can't, you don't need stitches. You're good. They were like, all we can really give you is gauze for your tears. So they gave me that. And then the Sergeant Parker, he brought me over to a squad car, and he said, now look, he said, the media is already here. I guess they get it from scanners or something. He's like, they're already here. He's like, I'm going to sit you in the back here. I have tinted windows. They cannot see you. I'm not letting anybody near you. It was like he was my personal bulldog. And and then he was like, tell me what happened. And that's when I, was trying to give him as much information as I could. And he was like relaying stuff on his radio and stuff. And I think at one point they were even chasing the car, but it was hard because I had just gotten married. My name had changed. My license had changed. They had gotten my name wrong on the license. It was all like, it felt like It was just a Murphy's Law of being unable to give them information that was helpful.
Right.
But eventually it got to a point where there wasn't much more I could do, or there wasn't much more immediate response that he could do. And so that's when he took me to the Victim Service Center here in Orlando. And it was just, honestly,
I'm sure that they probably had some officers going over to your apartment at that same point,
I think so.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I didn't go back to my apartment until the next morning. But I do believe that that's where most of them went to. Yeah.
Okay. So you end up there. Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, so I was the detective assigned. We all went to Rachel's apartment, and everybody else. Detective Lopez met with Rachel at the Sexual Assault Treatment Center, where he obtained the initial formal statement from Rachel, and then the rest of us were trying to figure out what happened at that point. So I guess the only discrepancy we had with Rachel's, the way she told her story was, I think at one point I was at Detective Lopez told me that the bad guy made Rachel take a shower. And then I went to the bathroom. It was completely dry. So I asked Detective Lopez, I'm like, are you sure, that Rachel's, the bad guy made her take a shower because this is dry? So I think Detective Lopez asked you again, Rachel, the sequence of events, because, you didn't remember everything, obviously, at that point until he asked you specifically. And that's when she told him that, the bad guy did wipe down the shower and the walls and the tub and all that stuff, which is very important for me as a crime scene detective, so I can collect that towel, and still process the bathtub for DNA evidence.
Right.
But other than that, Rachel's story was just was perfect for us, right? We got a lot of detail out of that. I think Rachel, you want to talk a little bit about the exam? That's a tough one.
Yeah, so we got to the Victim Service Center here in Orlando is a pretty unique service provider. It's a nonprofit, and they provide sexual assault exams and other things for victims of violence, and it was just for me, it was just an unassuming house. Like, he just brought me to a house. It was just, you wouldn't have known it. It was on just a regular neighborhood in downtown Orlando. And, when you walked in, it looked like somebody's living room, but instead of a book of birds on the coffee table, it was rape pamphlets. And so, one of the bedrooms was an exam room. One of the bedrooms was an interview room. So I was greeted by a couple nurses, and they walked me through a very uncomfortable but yet very valuable examination, because it yielded a lot of evidence from my body for my case. And, then afterwards they had to take all of my clothing into evidence. Everything, every stitch that I was wearing, even my shoes, my underwear, everything was taken. They gave me clothing to wear home. And then I sat in another makeshift bedroom that was set up as an interview room with Detective Lopez. And that's where I sat and I told my story for the first time. And again, I remember feeling at a loss. I remember feeling still in shock, and I couldn't really give him much to go on because this was a stranger to me. I knew nothing. I'd never seen him before. It was like finding a needle in a haystack to me. And I remember he said to me, and I think he got in trouble for this, but he said to me, I promise we will find him. And I remember just thinking, how are you going to do that? And, I just remember going home, and then, at that point, my husband had met me at the center, at the crisis center, and he took me home. And then, we met another detective there when we got there, and she didn't really ask me any questions. Like, she didn't make me walk through the whole story. She was just like, tell me the places he touched, tell me where things happened. And so I just kind of walked her through the apartment and like showed her where the things actually occurred. And then, she left, and I just immediately started packing a bag. And she came knocking on the door like just a few minutes later, and she's like, just so you know, there's a news van out here. You might want to go somewhere. And I was like, already on it. So we went to one of my best friend's house, and actually stayed there until we were able to find a different place to live. I'd never went back to the apartment except to move.
I don't blame you.
No. But I think it all happened really quickly after that. Like, I remember I literally couldn't sleep until for like 36 hours. I just felt so heavy on my heart. This person that was out there, that he would do this to again, and because I had said something, he would make sure that they actually died that time, and or that he kept them from saying anything.
In the meantime, your car is still missing, right?
My car is still missing. I still, my phone is missing. I don't have a phone. I don't have my purse. I don't have anything. My bank cards, nothing. Everything's gone. Yeah. Everything was taken from me that night. Everything. Even my clothes, not to mention a lot of dignity. But,
yeah, right.
But it, I remember I just couldn't sleep. And I remember they wanted me to come in and do a sketch. And I just was so overwhelmingly worried about that, because I just like, how am I going to get that right? Those all look the same to me. They just look like cartoons. How is that going to help? And then I remember the detective, she called me, and she was so excited. She's like, we got a great picture from the ATM. It's going to go on the news. You don't have to do the sketch. And it was like relief, And sure enough, they put it on the news, and through some crime tips and everything, they were able to locate him and arrest him. And that's when I was able to sleep. I couldn't sleep until they found him.
Yeah.
All I could think of was just somebody else and being hurt because I said something. And
I'm still just kind of trying to wrap my head around how you were even able to even speak. I would have been I can't even imagine what you went through, but just seeing another human being in your house, at that very moment, because was it dark or was it pretty well lit when you saw him?
The only light in my apartment at that point was like the foyer light, the light right at the front door that was like, and it was pretty dimly lit. And it was
just
not
the sheer terror.
Yeah.
You had to have just been almost numb, So I don't know, that part right there to me would have been just overwhelming. And then of course, when you go into the bedroom, etc., all of that has got to be just incredible. What were some certain things about him other than the accent that even to now, what was it that was those certain unique things about him that you remembered?
Oh gosh.
That stood out.
I just remember him being tall and skinny. And he told me he was 26, but I found out later he was only 17 at the time. He was 6 months shy of his 18th birthday. But I didn't have really anything to go off of. His clothing was really all I could give them, like what he was wearing. I was like, it was like a kind of a graphic tee, and he had this kind of holographic type hat. And that's really all. I couldn't give him much. I kind of felt like there were things that I was very aware of, and then there were also things that I still have memories, new memories to these days, of like, oh yeah, that happened, or that's the way it happened, or
yeah, right. And I didn't mean to get you off track. So at that point, you're back there, you're dealing with this. Your husband's dealing with this as well, which has got to be that's something I think that a lot of people forget. All that's going on too. That's a lot of. I'm sure he asked you. Did he ask you about it?
Actually, no. In fact, we divorced fairly soon after the incident.
That was going to be another question. I was curious.
Yeah. Well, we were very newly married at that point. I don't think we were even, I think it's 6 months at that point, married, maybe a little bit longer. And it was, I think it's important to note that everybody reacts to trauma in different ways. And I don't think that there is a wrong way. And I think he was, the way he responded was he shut down. He didn't want to know about it. He wanted to hear about it. I remember when the police came by with the gun for me to, identify it, he couldn't look at it. He had to turn his back to it. It was all, it was very hard for him. Still to this day, he doesn't know the details. And what was most heartbreaking for me was, recently in an appeals process, he was brought in to testify on some things that were unnecessary. And he was drugged back into a lot of pain and, a past life that I'm sure he wanted behind him. And, I did reach out to him and say, if you ever have any questions, let me know. I mean, I'm an open book. But still to this day, he's, he hasn't asked for the story yet.
All right. So you go from there and what happens next? As far as you get your stuff, you're out of there. Yeah.
Yeah. So we went to my friend's house and things kind of happened quickly. Like, after the picture went on the news, I remember I think it was like 6 a.m. or something like that. My cell phone at this point had died. Well, it wasn't my cell phone. It was my husband's. It was the only one we had left, or maybe we'd gotten me another one. I can't remember. But anyway, we didn't have a cell phone. But they knew where I was staying at, and they couldn't get a hold of me. So they just came knocking on the door, like 4 or 5, whatever it was in the morning, waking up the house saying, we have a photo lineup. You need to identify him. And I was able to circle him on this lineup, and they were able to keep him because I think they were initially arrested him under drug charges, under marijuana charges. I'm sure Rick can tell you more about it, but I think what he was doing, or he'd taken my money and gone to buy a lot of marijuana and then was trying to redistribute it. And they were able to press charges based on that. But then that only held you for 24 hours or something like that. So they needed him to be identified for the other things in order to be able to keep him. So it was like time was of the essence, I guess, in that situation.
Yeah, go ahead, Rick. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah. So I still remember Detective Lopez telling me right after he interviewed Rachel, goes, Rick, I think I messed up. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, what did you? I'm thinking that he lost the sexual assault kit, all the evidence that was collected. He goes, no. I'm like, worse than that? He goes, yeah, I promised Rachel that we're going to get the bad guy. And I was like, and you know this, Jason, we never make those promises because we may not be able to keep them. So I'm like, you're an idiot. Now we can't go home. And we didn't go home until we caught the guy. But that ATM video really helped a lot. And the crime line tips started coming in pretty quickly. And and when I say all hands on deck, the entire police department stopped what they were doing to catch this guy. Whether you're in a traffic unit, riding a motorcycle, or community involvement, everybody pitched in to try to help catch this guy. And I think, at least I believe, that's because Rachel was home alone, and a lot of us in law enforcement had to start off working midnight shift alone, leaving our wives or girlfriends at home, our family at home. And we all felt like Rachel could have been, our wife or our girlfriend that we left home alone, and she was, victimized this way. But so that was, everybody literally pitched in. We were like trying to beat each other to this guy's apartment when we found out where he lived. So initially it was the drug unit that beat us to him, and his garage door was halfway up, and they smelled the odor of marijuana. So that was the initial, way to detain him. So they tried to knock on tried to get him to come out. He wouldn't come out. He ran upstairs, and because he was staying in a garage, so they peeked under the garage door and they saw marijuana being packaged. So that's why we believe that he took some of Rachel's money. Drove downtown where an officer a deputy got behind Rachel's car and tried to stop him, but he fled. But at that point, we didn't know anything about the sexual assault, so they had to let him go. So we thought it was just a burglary at that point. Anyway, he went upstairs. He wouldn't come out for a while, and we later determined that he was literally trimming his hair to try to change his appearance before he gave himself up. So we brought him back to the station. Part of the unit stayed there because we're now obtaining a search warrant for the entire house. But the drugs itself got us in the door, and so he at his house we were able to retrieve the remainder of Rachel's money. Some of the expired macaroni and cheese that he took from Rachel's kitchen cupboard.
I was wondering what that was about. I was like,
it was exactly expired because Rachel was poor back then. And then at the bottle of I don't know if it's wine or champagne from the Biltmore Castle.
It was champagne from our honeymoon. Yes, it was champagne from Biltmore. So I think I don't remember I think that was able to be used as evidence because it wasn't like a typical bottle of champagne.
You can't buy that from a store. You have to you have to buy that from Biltmore Estate.
Yeah.
That's in Asheville, North Carolina. So there's no way you would have had that. And then the gun. I remember the gun specifically because our lieutenant, you work with lieutenants before, Jason, they try to be helpful, but they haven't been a cop in a while. So he said he already searched this one room.
No comment, Rick. Rick, I have to be careful.
That's right. This is going to be played again. So yeah, that's exactly the dresser drawer, and he checked all the drawers, but he checked that last drawer. That's one in the picture right now. We don't see anything in there. But if you don't pull the drawer all the way out, the gun was stashed underneath that last drawer. So he missed it completely. Luckily, my partner and I went back and searched behind him, and were able to retrieve that gun. The only way Rachel can identify that gun is she described it to Detective Lopez as a Western-style gun. That was a big thing in trial because I think there's one juror he didn't understand what a Western-style gun was. But other than that, it was pretty quick. We took him back to the station. He lawyered up right away. Which is probably smart on his part. But then we got a warrant to swab his body, all his body parts, to see if he's got any of Rachel's DNA on him left behind. And I remember he refused to, but then he asked the detective Garcia to swab him because he wanted a female to swab him. We're like, we're not doing that. So we literally had to use reasonable force to obtain the body swabs from him. He was definitely resisting.
Really?
So, yeah, we had to hold him down and swab him. Anyway, so from that point on, we were able to make the case against them. There was a question that came up: is that stranger rapes doesn't happen often. A very small percentage are stranger rapes, and this just happened to be one of them. But we don't think he knew Rachel, but there was a point, I guess, during the trial, it came out that he lived in that same apartment as Rachel, same building. I think his brother lived there, and he may have not seen Rachel. I don't know. We never put the connection together. But he was, so the investigation itself was pretty quick. I remember that. Within, in your case, it's 48 hours. Within 48 hours, we caught this guy. It was very, very quick. So we got him off the streets. But after that, I'll let Rachel pick up from here the trial portion. That took
and I'll tell you something. There's something about a stranger case in this type of a stranger rape. I hate that word, but that's what we were in my world. That's what we were. Those stranger rape cases, those are very terrifying for us as cops. We are even down in homicide, because that's like a homicide waiting to happen. Serial killer type stuff. So they kind of graduate to that. And if they're willing to go inside somebody's house to do something horrific like this, then they will do anything, as far as I'm concerned. So, that's another reason I think the department, I think you're right, Rick. A lot of the cops out there, it could have been their wives or their girlfriends, or et cetera. But literally, it's also one of those things it's one of those things that the cops really, it lights a fire under all police, believe me, and detectives. So anyway, go on. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make a mention of that, because now we're here at the trial, and this is going to be, I'm interested to hear about this. So go on and tell us how that was for you.
So I remember after all of the police work had been done, the one detective, she called me and she said, now this is the hard part, because it's going to take a while. It's not going to go as quick as we did, and you need to be patient, and you need to be strong, and you need to hang in there. And boy, was she right. Because the trial took about 18 months in total it took about 18 months before it went to trial. Initially, he tried to plea out. And so they were actually going to take a plea of like 15 years, which I didn't agree with. I knew from his behavior in my home and in my presence, even in the short time he was within it, that he had either done this before or he'd thought a lot about what he was going to do. And if he was ever to get out again, I wouldn't be the only person, right? I knew that to my core. But it's, I'm just evidence for the state. At that time, I was just a witness for the state. It was their case against him. So I didn't have a say in that. So we went to the the sentencing hearing, but apparently he committed suicide or tried to commit suicide the night before, and was claiming insanity, and actually fired his attorney and then represented himself. And there was this whole period where they had to get him in a psych evals, like, one found him sane, one found him unsane, and one found, and that whole process took, because each one, it was like a 3 or 4 month period of time. And until finally they had a third one break the tie and say, not only is he sane, but he's doing all of this to manipulate the system. So we've got on the docket, the trial. It went to trial in, I want to say September of 2008. And then I think the trial lasted about a week. His defense was that, remember, I think I mentioned he was only 17 at the time. His defense was that he and I had been having an affair, and that I didn't want to get in trouble for, having an affair with a minor. And so I made the story up, and I didn't want to get in trouble with my husband for having this affair. And so I made the story up. And, he talked about all kinds of things. I got him a cell phone. I took him to Kobe for his birthday. I took him to this Magic Mall place, which is like a flea market type place, but I didn't even know what that was. So like they pulled me back in to cross-examine or rebut his testimony. And they were like, did you ever take him to these places? I'm like, no. Did you take him to the Magic Mall, this mall? And I'm like, what is that? And I thought it was like a souvenir shop for the basketball team here in Orlando, the Magic. So I was so clueless about some of the things that he was saying. So obviously that translated to the jury. And they actually decided at the end of closing statements to stay instead of going home and then coming back to deliberate. They wanted to stay and give their verdict. I think it probably took the judge longer to read the documents to them than it took them to come to a verdict. So I think it was reached like 8 or 9 or 10 o'clock at night. I can't remember. I think I remember we had gotten pizza, and I don't remember. But yeah. So then the month later in October, it was, the sentencing, and my victim's advocate with the court, let me know that I could write an impact statement, and I was like. I think for weeks I wrote and rewrote in this thing because I wanted to get it just right. And I was even like crossing things out and writing things in the car ride there. I wasn't driving, but like in the car ride there, I was like, and then even in the gallery, in the benches, I'm still redoing it. And when it was my turn to finally get up there and say something, I remember just staring at this paper and just saying, I spent a lot of time trying to write down how this has changed my life forever. And there are no words for it. And I will never be the same again. And I said, my only plea to the court is that you provide the maximum penalty allowed by the law. Because if he ever gets out again, he will do this to somebody else. And please don't let this happen to anybody else. And the judge, she listened. She gave him 4 life sentences and 67 years for the 13 counts against him to be served consecutively. And yeah, he was tried as an adult. He did appeal. He appealed on a statute that said that sentencing a minor to the death penalty is cruel and unusual punishment. So he appealed on those grounds. His life sentences were reduced to 40 years apiece, which still meant it was like 200 and something years he would have to serve. And so he appealed again, saying that was basically the same thing. Mm-hmm. And then that appeal he did win. He got reduced. All of his time would be served concurrently instead of consecutively. Really? So it was reduced to 50 years. Yes.
Okay.
So
50
now
is still a long time.
he's 50, still a long time.
Yeah.
Every time I would do the math. So I'll be like hopefully in my 80s.
Well, is that an 85% crime, Rick?
Yes, with good
Okay.
behavior, but he hasn't been very good.
Oh,
in
well,
prison.
yeah, good. So that doesn't automatically mean that you get out with, time, you get credit for good behavior along the way. Yeah.
Well,
that's good.
he was also here illegally. So when he does get out, he'll be extradited immediately.
To where? To where?
Jamaica.
Oh, okay. All right.
Hence the
So now, what was that like for you on the stand, recounting these events?
I mean, it was 2 days of testimony. I think it was powerful for me because I was able to look him in the eye, and he was on, I guess my turf, if you will. And I was able to stand up for myself. I was able to take back a lot of power that I had lost the last time I had been in his presence.
Yeah.
And
so when they come back with this sentence, did you feel, I mean, you're still living with it. You still, nothing's changed. Did you feel satisfied with the sentence, and did it make you feel better? Or was it? Okay.
Oh, I felt relief. Yeah, it was relief. It was that, I think for me, it always has been, don't let this happen to somebody else. That was the only thing that rang. That was the only thing that rang in my heart from when I couldn't sleep, when I was just like, this cannot happen to somebody else. Mm-hmm. And, hearing the sentence, it solidified that for me, that it wouldn't. And so, yeah, and it was also, and in some ways, so he couldn't come back at me. Right. He still has a brother out there that lives somewhere I think he's in Baltimore or somewhere around somewhere. Mm-hmm. But and then, he used people through different means to steal my identity. He was calling all of my witnesses from jail, trying to get them to not testify, trying to get me to not testify. So in a lot of respects, hearing the sentence was just like, it was like putting it to bed, shutting him up. Yeah. Right. And he still is appealed here and there, and it's, but I have faith in our system. I have faith in mainly the due diligence that every man and woman did to touch my case, to make it as rock solid as it was. It made it hard for him to appeal. They didn't cut corners. They didn't try to do anything. They did everything by the book and perfectly, and it made my case strong. And for that, I'm grateful.
Yeah, I think the Orlando Police Department's not filled with a bunch of morons. You guys have a really good reputation, right, Rick?
We do, actually. I wanted to mention a couple of things that Rachel forgot to mention. I thought it was kind of funny. While he was waiting for trial for his first plea agreement, he actually drank bleach in order to make him think that he's crazy and all that. And then I think the funny part was when he tattooed Rachel's name on his chest.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God!
To make him look like they were both.
Spelled it wrong. He spelled it wrong.
So that was awesome. I remember having to go to the jail and taking photos of that. But I think for any law enforcement officers who are watching this, the big takeaway for us here is throughout the trial, when Rachel had to testify, none of us can support her because we're all witnesses to her trial. But on the bad guy side, there's always family members there supporting him. So we made it a point, Detective Lopez started this a while back, is we stay with our survivors, our victims, throughout the trial. While they're waiting outside to testify, we're there to greet them after they testify. During closing arguments, when we're all allowed to go inside, now we're there to support our survivors and also hold the juries and make them think like, hey, we invite all our friends and we fill up that part of the gallery and we'll let the jury know we're on Rachel's side. We believe her 100%. We're there during sentencing. So again, we hold the judge accountable. I think it's important. I even fool my coworkers. I'll tell them, like, if I have a case going to closing, I'll say, hey, lunch is on me. And I'll get everybody in the van and we'll go out, buy them lunch, but then we'll stop by the courthouse. I won't even tell them what we're doing there, and then we just show up and we fill up the courtroom. And we made it a habit to start doing this. And also, I think the most important thing that Rachel shares her story to all my classes. We've been doing this presentation for about 18 years now, Rachel.
Yeah.
And how did it get going, Rick? What point when you started this thing, literally, I mean, she must have been somebody special for you to be,
yes.
you know.
And I told Rachel this before. Every time I hear her story, that's the biggest PTSD I have, because it brings me back to that night. Whenever she tells her story, I'm back. And that night, I'm thinking, this could have been my daughter, because she was off to college. This could have been my wife, right? When I was out on a call or whatever. So I think that every officer needs to hear Rachel's experience, because as you know, sexual assault cases are very tough to investigate and to prove in court. And so I first started teaching the course, Adult Sex Crimes Investigations. And I thought about, how can I make an impact with my students? And I went to Detective Garcia. I'm like, hey, do you think Rachel's willing to speak to my class? And I still remember the first time Rachel actually presented my class. She ends the class. So she comes in at 3 p.m. on a Friday, and she'll close the class out. Everything that we learned, Rachel will bring it all home. And I remember the first time you were so nervous, but now it's she's she still tells, she doesn't use any notes. She tells her story from the heart, from her memory, and I think that's very impactful to all my students. At the end of that, and I'll get the evaluations, and I share it with Rachel. I'm like, they'll remember Rachel for every case that they investigate. They're always going to remember Rachel's experience. So I think that's very important, and I'm very thankful for Rachel for having to come in. I think she only missed one because she was out on vacation, but we've been doing this at least 4 or 5 times a year. Plus now she does conferences with me, which
that's awesome.
We're on tour.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, we went to California, we went to Virginia, and now we're going to Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the more people and it's an older case, right? It's 07. But I think the same thing can happen now. The same. There are a lot of Rachels out there that have to go.
Well, that's right. I mean, nothing's really changed. I mean, the only thing that's really changed, I think, in this world, is the advances in forensics.
Oh yes.
With respect to DNA, which are, it's exponentially better now. You have the use of MVACs now that are game changers, and we have flock cameras. Rick, I don't know if you know what that is, but it's the biggest thing that's ever happened in my career. Those things are solving cases left and right, because in this case, they could have probably found your car in no time. Where did they find your car, incidentally?
They found it back at the same parking lot. In fact,
park,
yeah. In fact, they actually had a bloodhound that followed the scent of him from the car down the street to McDonald's to the seat. I believe this is right. Tell me if I'm telling the story wrong, Rick. To the seat where he sat and had a burger, and then over to the apartment complex. But then they lost the scent at the apartment. So they got to the apartment complex, but which apartment it was, they didn't know. But I want me a bloodhound.
Yeah, bloodhounds are awesome, but they make a lot of mess. They make a big mess. You don't want that.
Now, Rachel, just out of, and I want you to speak freely here, and I don't want you to hold back. But in your experience with respect to the police, the prosecutors, really the police, what was your impression of them? Did you feel like they believed you? I know that Rick was having questions about the bathtub being dry, but I think that's a valid question. I mean, but what was your experience?
Yeah, I didn't even know that until several years later, that was, I never got that feeling that I wasn't believed, other than being asked, "Are you sure you didn't know him?" Because there was a lot of things that pointed to, he lived in the same apartment complex as me at one point. Right. And, unfortunately, 9 times out of 10, a sexual assault victim knows the person. So in my case, it was a lightning bolt incident. And it also happened at night. I will never know if I interrupted a burglary or whether he knew my comings and goings because he was watching me or something and knew I was going to be there. That lives in his brain forever. But I will say that everybody that touched my case, I was blessed in a lot of ways with, the outcomes of the case from, the support that I had from my friends and family, but also everybody that touched it, from the law enforcement officers to the lab techs to the prosecutors. Everybody that touched my case was wonderful. And to Rick's point, I am so happy to have the opportunity to speak with him or to come to a class of his, because not only is it because the entire OPD was on my side at one point, it's the least I can do to give back, right? But at the same time, it allows me the opportunity to do just what Rick said, and that is to share my story in a way that if it helps just one person or helps them help somebody else, then it makes that much more worth it to me about what I went through. And so being allowed that opportunity and knowing that I can help make that difference with my story and help other victims find their voices and come out of their own darknesses and start their own journeys is really, if that's what I can help with telling my story, then I'm grateful for any opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Well, young lady, you're helping a lot more than just one person. I can promise you on that. And not only that, but the police officers that Rick's got in his classes and his investigators and stuff, I think it's paramount for us to hear from the victims. And I think that really brings something to the table. And I'm really glad to hear you mention something about Rick. I really loved it when you mentioned something about going to the closing arguments and staying there. I make it a point in my cases. I always, if I'm not a case agent, I will come back and I sit through closing arguments and I stay till the verdict comes back. That's my investment to that family. And I do the same thing. I try to get as many people in there to make sure that people know that they're watching and we're here for that person. So good for you. You're a hero. You really are, Rachel. I know you don't feel that way probably, but the fact of the matter is that you're sharing your story. That means a lot to a lot of people. And that's why our viewers that have been sitting in here have not left. They've stayed here throughout this entire thing because I'm sure they're captivated by the story. Since he didn't talk, I would be interested to know, did you guys ever find out anything in his past that showed that he had been victimized himself, or there's some sort of, what was his background like? Did he have a background of any kind?
So he came from Jamaica, so we don't really know what happened over there. They don't keep a lot of records over there. But his mom came to the sentencing and was pleading with the judge to give him a light sentence. But mom said that she sent him to Orlando or to the U.S. to have a better life. So he was about 10 years old when he came to the United States. We had a picture of his passport picture when he was 10, when he came here for a better life. Obviously, he chose otherwise. He chose to live the life of a criminal instead of the opportunities that was afforded to him by this country. So he didn't have a lot. He did not have any criminal history. Has he ever done this before? We'll never know. I think that I noticed some questions in Rachel's mind about whether he targeted her. I think he targeted her apartment, a vacant apartment, easy way to get in because of that cat door. I'm not so sure that he actually waited for her. I think she interrupted it, and it's just a secondary crime for him. It's like, okay, I didn't get much from this burglary, and now I'm going to take advantage of Rachel. And then I think Rachel's the one who offered the money. I don't know if he would have thought about that on his own, but I think that's a good move on your part to get you out of the house. And then taking the car, he didn't want to keep the car, obviously, because that's a connection. But no, I don't think he had a criminal history. Whether he did some shoplifting or anything burglarizing before, we'll never know.
What do you normally see in these these stranger cases? Do you see that there is like window peeping? Is that pretty common?
Oh yeah, pretty common.
Burglary.
Even Ted Bundy, Ted Bundy started off as window peeping, masturbating, and then he got up the courage to move up to that. I'm not sure if this guy did that. I know that I think his primary intent was to burglarize Rachel's apartment, and Rachel just happened to be at the wrong place, wrong time. It's her apartment, but I think when you left the second time is when he came in. So yeah, and no, I also want to mention that there's a lot of secondary trauma to this, like Rachel's husband that went through it, and Rachel, you want to share a little bit about what your family, how your family? I always think that's the best part of your experience.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that.
So I am originally from Texas and, was living in Orlando for some time. My brother at the time was in Baltimore, doing some work up there. My sister also lived there, but my dad and the rest of my entire family was all in Texas. My brother too, I will say, was in the Marines. He was actually a sharpshooter in the Marines. So, I guess that's the Texan in him too. So I remember when he was flying down to come see me directly after the events, after I called him and told him what happened, he immediately got on a plane. My dad was calling him, on the phone. He was about to get on the plane and he said, they haven't found him yet. And my brother was like, I'm on it.
I bet he was. I
think he was going to come down on his own Marines mission. Yeah. But yeah, it is important to note that, this kind of event does have a butterfly effect. It will ripple across, for years, not just the people that were in my orbit, directly in the days after, but people that are new to me. My daughter will one day learn this story and it will impact her. And, she's only 6 now, but, she's learning about stranger danger and she's learning about, things in the world. And one way I want to protect her from that, but in other ways, I hope that I can make her strong enough to survive something of her own one day, if that would be the case. Yeah. But, it's again, thank you. I agree.
Yeah. Well, sure she is.
But she, it's just one of those things that it doesn't just affect the 2 people involved. It doesn't just affect the victim. His life is forever ruined because of the choices he made. When our paths crossed that night, that both of our lives were changed forever. I get to live mine, thankfully. But yeah, it's not an event that goes without its consequences in all directions.
Yeah. And Rick, real quick, I think that it's important that, number one, just to at least tell people, if you are a victim to something like this, report it. It's easy for me to say I'm a cop and I'm a male cop, but really I think that you need to report these because the rest of people out there count on you to do that. And how many of these are not reported, Rick? There's a good many of them that don't get reported. Am I right?
Yes, it's the most underreported crime we have, and there's several reasons for that. There's a lot of shame, and a lot of victims feel like they contributed to them being selected as a victim, or and then being believed. And we always say, as first responders, we should start by believing, but really, in reality, we're not the first responders. They're friends. It's usually not the cops that they first tell about the sexual assault. They tell their friends about it, or their family members, or their husbands, boyfriends, and it's up to them to encourage the victims to report. So that's where it starts. And then, of course, for cops, because we deal with so many of these, a lot of date rapes and all that stuff, we don't get a lot of these stranger rapes, that we just need to start by believing, and then we go from there. And I think that's very important to do.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted Rachel to share too a couple of things, because I got these questions in my head. Rachel and I've been doing this for a while.
No, please.
talk about how you feel about guns, because at some point your husband made a comment about the gun. What is
So we didn't have a gun in the home, and what was one of the things he kept asking for was, "Where's your gun?" Other than money, and we didn't. I was like, I don't have one. We don't have one, and I remember telling my husband at the time, I should have fought back, like I should have. Why didn't I fight back? And just self-doubt. Victims aren't the only ones that blame themselves. But like he validated it. He was like, well, 9 times out of 10 the gun isn't loaded, and so it was not helpful. I remember somebody else that I knew, and I guess it was loaded for sure. And I guess, somebody else I knew, I said the same thing. And, his response was, well, no, you don't fight back if Bambi has a gun. Like, you did the right thing. You're alive. Yeah. So it's true. I guess I did all the right things because I'm able to tell my story. But yeah, I remember we didn't have a gun. And then I changed jobs, and then my boss at the time was like an NRA guy, and he was just like, I'm going to take you to the range and we're going to go shooting. And that was like actually the first time I had actually shot a gun. And then I was like, okay, now I want one. So, but I do have a small 22. It's in a safe, locked away. I haven't shot it in so many years. It's probably rusted out, but
Yeah, but it gives you a little peace of mind knowing that you have it.
Right.
Yeah.
But I did, actually I have 2. It's Annie and Oakley, I call them. But
the one question, Rachel, I think a lot of people have in mind, but they're afraid to ask because it could be a little sensitive. But I always ask for people, it's like, did you have a difficult time being intimate with a partner after the incident?
Right. Yeah. So I was actually I was very lucky in the respect that at the time, somebody I knew, I grew closer to, knew what had happened. In fact, he was the same person that called me that night and woke me out of my almost sleep to get me out of my apartment to help him home. And we ended up growing a lot closer after those events, and we got married and we had our daughter.
Okay.
So I was incredibly lucky to have him in my life at that time where I didn't have to explain it, right? I didn't have to, figure out how do I date after this happens, right? It just, so I was very fortunate in that respect. And from that, it was also very important to me to reclaim that part of life for myself because, to me, sex is a good thing, but what happened that night was not that. And I was determined to, not have that part of life taken away from me.
Yeah. Good for you.
So now it is kind of like I've since my husband now we've since recently divorced, and I'm dating again, but and now I'm back to at least it's a little more convenient because I'm like, just Google me. So but it's one of those things like when do you talk to somebody about it? When do you bring this part of you? Because it's not an easy topic for people to hear. So I find myself to be more sensitive about telling it and having them being okay to hear it than, it bothers me to actually tell the story.
Well, I mean, you got a good head on your shoulders and you're definitely a catch. So, you are well adjusted. So, good for you. Seriously. Good for you. I'm honored to have had you on this show, both of you. Rick, if people are interested in having the two of you come and speak at their conference, I'm sure that that you are all about doing that for the future. How do they get a hold of you guys?
Yeah, just send me an email. I'll type in my email. You can share it with your audience. Well, you know my email, right? rick.salcedo@ucf.edu. I don't charge a fee. Rachel, of course, has to take time off from work, so I always try to get her a little something to kind of make
Good.
up.
He's my agent. He's always pushing for me. I'm always like, no, I don't like to charge. That's not my brand.
And we're not out to make money, but Rachel shouldn't be losing money either. I believe, but we're not out to make money. But I think the most important thing is to get the message across as many people as we can. Whoever wants to listen to it is prepared to listen to it, and if we can change, if we can make one case better or help one victim, I think Rachel and I have done our best to make this a better world, right?
That's right. Listen, I appreciate you both. Seriously. Hey, Rick, just out of curiosity, what is your opinion of what would make for a great special victims unit detective? What qualities do they bring to the table? It's something that you really have seen because you've been in that business forever. Yeah. What do you think are the best people for supervisors to listen to as to who they should be looking at?
So every one of my partners has a story and the reason why they became detectives and special victims. The ones who does not have a story, those are the ones that just want to be part of the unit so they can get promoted, because it's the next it's a step before you get to homicide or a step before you get promoted. But the ones who last the longest are the ones who have a story behind the reason why they're doing what they do. The girls that I worked with have been victims themselves, which makes them really good because they're very passionate about it. So you have to be passionate about this kind of work. Otherwise, it's a lot of work. You put a lot of time in, and I'm fortunate that I had a very supportive wife, Robin, who've been living together for 42 years, been married 42 years, but 35 years as a cop's wife, that's got to be hard, right? So, but she's actually supported me throughout, raised the kids, but while I was playing detective out there. So we put a lot of time in doing these things. And if you don't feel like you can have the passion for this is not the kind of work for you. But we see where even the supervisors who are placed in that position, they don't last long because they don't really have the passion for this type of work.
Yeah, it takes a special person to do certain jobs within the police world, and it's a lifestyle. It's not just a 9 to 5 or an 8 to 4. You have to be empathetic and really care. And so there are those people out there. Rick is one of them. That's why he's my buddy and why we've hung out many a nights at a bar. Yes. Talking about and networking. Hey, listen, ladies and gentlemen, I want to appreciate everybody that's joined us here tonight. Rick, I really do hope that we get to speak somewhere together in the future. And maybe one day I'll even meet Rachel and you at a conference down the line. You just never know. I hope you guys had a good time. I've had a good time, and I know that that probably for Rachel this is somewhat therapeutic for you just to tell that story. And it's such an important story for you to tell. I hope that you continue to do that, and you couldn't ask for a better agent in Rick to help you along on that. But ladies and gentlemen, go ahead.
No, I'm forever grateful for him in so many ways, but I'm so glad we have the partnership we do today. He's good people. I really think the world of him. Is there any final words before we get off of here from either one of you?
I think we're good. Thanks for having us. I really appreciate the opportunity to get to your audience. You got an international audience, so that's awesome, I think.
It's a big deal, Rick. It's a radio show, not just a podcast, buddy. We have had big time guests on here. So I appreciate the two of you. You guys are definitely the type of people that I want to have come on here, people that are moving mountains and doing great things out there, especially in the world of criminal justice. So ladies and gentlemen, once again, I want to thank everybody for being here. This show is not a show without you. And finally, Phyllis, we're going to be praying for William. And hopefully, he has better days in his future. And everybody, just thank you very much. Remember, go to my YouTube page, Detective Jason White. where you can watch this episode over and over and 53 other ones. And next week, we're going to have Jared Bradley, who is the owner of the MVAC company, or I don't know what he's known as Jared Bradley, the DNA guy, and he owns the company that will sell you an MVAC, and it's innovative, and you should check that episode out next week. He's really somebody special as well. And I can't think of anything else other than I want to thank you both. And if there's any questions, if I get emails in reference to how to get you guys, I'm going to definitely be forwarding it on to people. And thanks again, guys. I appreciate it. Don't click off. Hang out. And Amanda, thank you for all the work you did behind the scenes, and take us out.